So, welcome back to Beyond HR. This particular episode is going to be fascinating. It's going to be about exit insights and stay signals. The goal here is to demonstrate step by step how GPT can turn exit data into stay signals and help in terms of practical retention levers. We're really excited about it. I'm Jeff Wellstead.
And I'm Shveta Malhan. And like Jeff said, today we are tackling that painful truth that by the time the exit interviews hit your desk, your best people are already gone.
So we're going to be flipping the script. We're going to be showing you how to turn everyday conversations into early warning signals and then into simple actions that managers can take next week.
Yep. And here's the flow. So Jeff and I were debating what kind of pieces should we add to the demo. And where we landed was that we'll use a simple to complex approach in our prompts to show you how you can use your AI as your augmentation for simple descriptive analytics, but also then get into more diagnostic correlations to see what is connected to what and make choices. And then the third level would be using AI for predictive and prescriptive analytics as well, so that we can determine what to do next.
So you have just described, Shweta, something that seems incredibly complicated, right? And the fact that we're going to be using ChatGPT basically to go from picking out data around exit interviews and somehow converting that into a predictive capability. That feels to me like you need an advanced degree in computer logic and system design and all sorts of fancy things. You have some of this background, which is brilliant. But I mean, that's the whole point of this exercise is it turns out you don't need, all of that. So the only thing I would ask as we get into this, just for our followers to kind of understand is where did we get the data that you're going to be playing with and how did you kind of pull that together? That's super useful. And then the other thing is just to kind of all throughout this process, just kind of like let us into your thinking process a bit. Let us into your logic and why it is you chose to, I don't know, ask GPT this particular question versus that. Fascinating to know. The way your mind works already blows my mind. But you don't, this is the point, people, is that you don't need to be any kind of a computer genius to go do this. You have this data. You live with this stuff every day. All we're basically teaching you is how to use it to the best possible outcome to get exactly what it is you want to get out of it. Does that make sense?
Yep, totally, Jeff.
Okay,
And I'm
cool.
glad you asked this question because, I'll get into the prep for this demo to kind of just show behind the scenes thinking of how we set this up for our recording today. But I do want to highlight a fact here that the way I've designed this episode is very much based on my lived experience. So when I was lifting a people analytics capability, I got to see the nuts and bolts of what's behind the scenes, what's happening, how do we configure and set up a people analytics capability. That was one side of the equation. But then I also had exposure and experience in now that we have lit up the data, how ready are we to actually use not just the data, but the insights that we can pull to inform decisions of the stakeholders. And that's where I saw that the technology of the past wasn't solving the full, let's say, experience cycle of different stakeholders. Yes, I could get access to nice, pretty dashboards and charts and whatnot, but then so what? That so what was a big imagination gap especially for HR stakeholders, because now you have to translate that dashboard into what do I do with it? How do I tell the story?
Indeed.
So what I found very interesting was that once ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, these kind of tools came into play, it really plugged that gap of translation for different stakeholders because now we had the ability to interact with the large language model like we would ask an analyst. Like you could just ask questions in a simple, natural language way versus looking at a chart, trying to read it and interpret it. So that's what I really found fascinating working with large language models, especially to make sense of people data that we collect. Because not all of us are data scientists, neither am I.
Raised a really good point too, is that so often we go rushing to the creation of a dashboard, right? Which we think is just the be all and end all. Like, look at the cool stuff we're gathering. And multiple different ways we can display it. And then we share it with executives and they're like, ooh, okay, that's interesting. And then of course the bright one looks at you and says, so what? So
Yeah,
what do we do now? Kind of thing. And that's exactly what we're on about. This is all about getting into what you need to do now based on things that are about to happen.
that's
So
right.
brilliant.
That's
Cool.
right. Yeah, and creating this, so again, like always, we create synthetic data sets to do our demos. And I created a synthetic data set for this one too. But boy, I tell you, this one was a hard one. It took me like a couple of hours to get the data set ready, because to do a demo, we could have gone very simple. We could have just had like a 50 record data set with a few exit survey questions and few stay questions, but then it won't have given us the opportunity to play with the more complex scenarios of sense making of our exit data. So that's where I ended up creating this data set. Let me share with you what the data set looks like, just to kind of give you a flavor of it. And of course, we don't have, this session is not about designing the data set, so we won't get into the details of how I went about doing it, but just to give you a flavor of what is included in the data set. Let's start with like a simple descriptive prompt, because as soon as I put the prompt, you will be able to see what's included in this data set. Or let me just ask a simple question. Based on this data, tell me how many exits did I have in 2020? So while it's doing its magic, here's how I will show you a snapshot of the data set. So again, it has the employee ID, name, department, job level, location, the hire date, gender, ethnicity, education level, age group, manager ID, what was the last event type that that employee went through, when did that event happen, their performance rate, annual performance rating, their quarterly performance, um, and the potential flag for performance, promotion counts that they've had, years since last promotion, learning development hours, certifications that they have, any internal moves, their base salary, bonus percentage, salary band, compa ratio, recognition awards, sick days, vacation days. So you see, it has lots of data signals to connect and correlate.
And it's
Hmm.
interesting because oftentimes we look at this data and both of our lived experiences in the past, and we just, it's in a system of record, and there's a report section on the tool that we use, and we can just run a report, I don't know what, based on like who got promoted in the past year or things of that nature. But what is different in terms of using AI, with data like this, is it not only looks one or two dimensionally at a couple of data sets that might juxtapose and kind of pop up on a report, it can take in everything. It can literally look at the entirety of all of the data and look at it in however many different cuts and slices you need it to in order to start kind of making some really interesting insights into those individuals. So this is amazing. No wonder this took you a long time. Good grief. That's a heck of a data set. I think that's better than any data set I've used in reality.
Yeah, I know this is what I wanted to build, so that we can
Yeah,
experiment and
yeah,
push the
yeah.
limits of AI and see how far it
Cool.
can take us, right?
Nice.
All right, so it gave me a count that we had 34 exits in 2025. Now I can keep building on it for some descriptive uh, answers that we're looking for. Give me, let's say, give me a bar chart of all departments where exits happened. And for me, this is very, very basic. Like, even if you don't have a people analytics platform, creating these basic queries, reports, and charts is not a heavy lift for organizations. But what's beautiful having a LLM work with your data is that you can have a Q&A kind of an interaction with it, and you can ask it to do things that you're most curious about. So you have much more flexibility to engage with your data versus what, let's say, a people analytics platform would be able to deliver to you.
In a
So
way, it's like having your own private consultant. You know what I mean?
that's right.
Just there to answer everything for you. Who, by the way, is not tired, is endlessly enthusiastic about data, and will sit there 24/7 and just crunch whatever it is you give it to crunch. It's amazing.
That's right.
Okay.
So this was the couple of very simple prompts, but we can, even for descriptive and quick wins kind of prompts, we can go a little bit more complicated. Like here I have a prompt: show the 5 departments with the highest share of people who left within a year after their last day check-in. Include how many people were in each and the most common reasons that they mentioned. So now you see we are asking it to connect different data points together instead of just basic reporting that we tried with the first 2 prompts.
It does. It's be interesting. Okay. So here are the 5 departments with the highest share of people who left within a year after their last stay check-in. Interesting. So you've got different departments. You've got the total number of people left within the year. Gosh, that's a high number of people, I guess. And then that the percentage of that population is what share is. Is that the idea? Okay. Wow. Okay. Some high numbers. And the most common reason. And it looks like there's issues around flexibility, around higher pay, stronger team culture, higher pay came up twice, and strong team culture that came up twice. So interesting. Okay. There may be some things afoot here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the best part is now we don't have to stop at this output that we got. If we're curious, we can zoom into just the operations department, let's see, because that has the highest share of people who left after their stay, and dig deeper into finding out what's happening in operations. And maybe let's just do a basic prompt and say, I am really curious about operations. Can you tell me what's happening there? I don't know, I'm just interacting with it. It might not
Yeah,
give back anything meaningful, but let's test it out.
indeed. Okay. So here's what's happening in operations. Total of 55 people, 12 left within the year. That's 21.8%, the highest among all departments, interestingly. The reasons were most common overall reason across all ops employees was flexibility, needing more flexibility. Most common reason among leavers, strong team culture. Okay, so wow, fascinating. So that's suddenly it's already kind of identified some key patterns that we didn't have to manually go through and try to scratch together. And then it kind of breaks it down in terms of the different reasons for leaving.
Yeah.
Team culture issues. For interesting, it'd be fascinating to kind of where does your mind go as a HR practitioner when you see that data come back? Does it not kind of, as it's doing with mine right now, kind of lights a fire, and it's sort of like, whoa, what is going on? Why did 4 people leave because of team culture? Can I predict that, or is this going to give me some interesting data?
That's exactly where my mind goes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
like you want to keep probing it further and further till you get to, let's find out the root cause here,
Yeah. Quite.
right? So maybe we can ask it, what are your preferred root causes for this attrition?
The magic.
Yeah. And again, here, the stronger our data set is, the better inference it can make.
Very
The
good
more
point.
data points we connect, the better it can give us its inferred insights.
It's worth saying and stating right now that AI, the fuel it feeds on, the magic it creates is all based on good, solid data. The existence of good data and the accuracy of the data is really essential, and like it's never been before. So I can't make this point strongly enough. Good data hygiene is existential now, right? It is no longer sort of a nice to have, well done. We kind of kept a couple of records really clean. It's the fact that all the records need to be up to date and clean, because only then will you get these kinds of incredible outputs. So this is fascinating. Go ahead and take us through it, Shweta. What's going on here?
Yeah, so based on the data that it had in the data set, it's telling us that culture misalignment is a possible root cause. And the signal that it's using to make that inference is that most common reason among leavers is a stronger team culture, even though the broader ops team values more flexibility. So they are
Hmm.
desiring a stronger team culture. And the interpretation for the signal is that people might be joining with expectations of collaboration, support, camaraderie, but finding the day-to-day culture lacking, perhaps due to siloed work, interpersonal tensions, or leadership style mismatches. And why it matters? Because culture is often the silent killer of retention. Once it feels off, flexibility perks alone won't keep the won't keep the people. So it's
Hmm.
already inferring the data signals in a way that I don't have to manually go and like do a deeper dive. Imagine how much time it saved me as a
Amazing.
problem solver, because that's what HR needs to be in this context of, I have exit data, I do quarterly pulses, I do engagement surveys. But what do I do with that data? How can I not just look at exit data as a lagging indicator? Because if it's already happened, I mean, and it's just sitting there. How can I translate that into a leading indicator so I can proactively have mitigation strategies in place? This is a way of engaging with your data, and there are many more ways. We are just giving you a sample view based on our data set on how we can do better diagnostics of what's happening with our people and their engagement and why they choose to leave the company and where the engagement starts dipping so that we can have pointed solutions. Every company, like if you have $100 to spend for reducing, let's say, increasing engagement and reducing attrition, how will we make decisions and choices around where to invest that $100? So leverage data to probe, to find out where are the hotspots in the organization and do targeted solutioning. So broad stroke solutions is not what will serve us here.
And so often the case that that's exactly what we do, right? Because it just is in the face of overwhelming information everywhere that will take us weeks, if not months, to kind of parse through and try to make sense of. We get yelled at because retention is, or what do you call it, attrition is too high. It's north of 20, 25%. It's costing the company millions and
Yeah.
it's unrecoverable. What are you going to do about it, HR? Okay, I don't have time, obviously, to go through all the data. I have a gut sense for what's going on because I read the exit interviews. I think broadly, we probably have some issues with, I don't know, leadership and management. So maybe what we should do is just do a training program to kind of like train all those people on how to look for signs of disengagement. I think
Yeah.
that might be a thing to do. And look, I'm not making fun of people who have to do that. I can't tell you how many times I responded in that very same way because I just didn't have the resource. I didn't have the information and I didn't know how to process it. That tool wasn't there. So this isn't just about AI, but I guess it's about this sort of liberating notion that we now have a tool that loves data, that will take in everything you give it. And then basically you start to interrogate the questions it comes back with, and you start to learn almost immediately some really interesting concepts. Like if you look at, this why it matters element that keeps popping up underneath, Shweta didn't ask for that. She didn't say, hey, AI, can you tell me why this stuff matters? It automatically goes out to the to the internet and it basically pulls off some of the best research and says this stuff matters because of cultural dissatisfaction. Secondary factors like slightly better pay elsewhere, can push somebody over the edge. And these are really kind of like nuanced and deeply considered notions based again on data that the AI tool was able to, ChatGPT was able to kind of like chew on and make sense of, and did so in relationship to all the other reasons potentially that might be showing up. But it did so in a way that was far more objective than anything I know I could have come up with on my own, which arguably would have been far more subjective. And at the end of that experience, I'll be perfectly honest, I don't know if I would be that much more in tune with this information and that much farther ahead in terms of knowing what to then go do about it. I think I just would feel exhausted, overwhelmed, and really unsure of myself in terms of next steps.
Yeah.
That's why the use of these tools under these circumstances really make a difference in terms of how it is you can add value to the company.
That's right. That's right. Now, the HRBP who is responsible for supporting the operations team has, I wouldn't say we should look at power of data from an arrogance vantage point that I have data, I'm hoarding it, and it's only me who's going to help the operation leader with their team's, engagement, morale, retention. But what I'm getting at is that if both the operations team leader and the HR business partner who's supporting that operations team leader have access to the same data, imagine, because an operations team leader, one might not have time to make sense of this data. They might have nice visualizations that, yes, I have 50 plus people. This is the average tenure. Like they might have a Moneyball card, so to speak, for their people at their fingertips so that they can make more informed choices. But HR business partner can be more strategic here because they can be proactively sense making the data that they have and going to the to the operations leader to say, hey, this is what I'm finding that's happening in your team. Maybe you can just use XYZ as a lever to improve retention or improve engagement, or this particular pocket of your team is a hotspot. Maybe this manager needs a better like hand holding and coaching. So it can be much more targeted play using people data versus one hoarding mentality to not connecting the different signals that we have about people in the organization.
Indeed. Good.
All right. So here it's already telling us that do you want me to map into now, next, later? So again, I can either go the route, the prompting that AI is telling me, or I can say, I want to dig into possible manager influence. So I can, again, depending on which way I want to go, based on what problem I'm trying to solve for, I have the control. But if there is a little bit of, like for writers, we say writer's block, I don't know where to go. GPT helps you there too. Like if this information is something that doesn't inspire more curiosity, here's what I can do next for you. So if I just say, yes, do that, it will do what it was prompting me to do.
And I never trust the GPT, right? I'm like always thinking if I don't explain every little detail to it, it's somehow going to get it wrong. But you prove me wrong every time that it's actually paying attention. It's very clever and it knows what to do when you say, yes, please go do that.
Yeah.
So
So
funny.
here it's given me for operations team. Here's what you can do in your first 30 days. Do a team culture pulse, manager listening sessions, visible culture wins. And then within a month to 3 months, these are the medium effort structural shifts that you can implement in operations. And in a longer term, here's how you sustain retention and engagement. So it's giving us at least starting points. Nobody's saying that we have to do whatever ChatGPT is recommending 100% in the same way. But now I have something that is already crafted and I can tweak and tune it in my conversations with the operations leader as an HRBP. First lens, as an HRBP, I look at it and I say, is this making sense? Because I might have more contextual information that GPT doesn't, to layer that in, refine and fine tune it, then go take this recommendation to the operations leader to get their feedback, get their input, and finalize this plan for that team.
Wow. That's amazing. And I think that's what's important. So you basically can generate this information when the CEO or somebody, COO, whoever comes banging on your door and says, we need to do something, attrition is too high, what's your plan? This kind of a thing. You basically have interrogated this data in less than, 15 minutes. And I've already gotten to potential, solutions that are in fact targeted to the specific leading issues and exit issues that were recorded on the way out. And so, yeah, you have a bit of a direction already, but again, possibly not good enough. We'll keep looking at it.
Yep. Yep. All right. So now we zoomed into operations. I'm going to ask it to zoom back up, and I'm going to give it a little bit more complicated prompt. And I'll say, compare people who left versus people who stayed. What are their average manager support and career growth scores? Give me the difference in one plain English takeaway. Let's see what it does here. So if I had not asked it to zoom back up, it might have just looked at operations and given me the response.
Yeah, right. Okay. So now it's saying, all right, here's the comparison for 2025 between people who stayed versus people who left within 1 year. Okay, there's two groups, stayed and left. Average manager support. What is that? 2.9.
So
Okay, average career support. And what is this out of, by the way? Is this out of 5 or something?
yeah, it's out of 5.
Out of
But see,
5. Okay.
if instead of just reading the chart, that's why it's given us that plain English takeaway so that we at least know what it's giving us, and then we can again take it to a deeper layer. So basically it's saying people who left rated both their manager support and career growth clarity lower than those who stayed. So the gap in career growth clarity is roughly double the size of manager support gap, suggesting that lack of perceived career opportunities is a stronger differentiator for attrition than manager support.
Fascinating. Okay. And then gives us the data to back it up, which is super useful and something we didn't have before.
That's right. That's right. All right. Then I want to give a demo of a little bit of a diagnostic correlation. So here's my prompt where I say, when a reason shows up in a stay conversation, how often does that same reason show up in the exit interview? Give the overall match rate and top matching pairs. So let's see what it comes back with. Because I'm curious to know, when I do stay interview, if I don't address them, do they show up in exit interviews as well? Is that sentiment carrying forward throughout the employee journey?
Yeah, we
So
always
right now,
overlook for that. You know, we look for that consistency, don't we, in terms of
yeah.
flow? Okay.
So it looks like there was no cases where exact same reason showed up.
Okay.
So what's the interpretation here? The reason employee says they want to stay often evolve into different exit reasons later. For example, someone might mention they want more flexibility in stay conversation, but ultimately leave for compensation, suggesting the original dissatisfaction wasn't fully addressed and new factors emerged or became more urgent over time.
That's a good point. I mean, that often happens too, right? Where people are generally feeling okay, you know, psychologically about the work they're doing, about who they're doing it for and with. And then, you know, they kind of like bring up an issue, a niggling issue, something related to like, I've not been given a raise in 2 years, or, you know, I can't remember the last time I was actually promoted for anything, or, you know, whatever the issue is. And let's say that just doesn't get addressed, registered as having been heard, and then nothing, crickets. What ends up happening is in the psychology of employees, and that goes for all of us, is when we start to feel aggrieved about that basically not being heard, and we think it's a really big issue, and somehow the organization, based on its reaction or lack of, basically feels like it's not that big a deal. And so, okay, well, suddenly other things are starting to become a big deal for me now too. And it's starting to get really frustrating. I don't necessarily like the work I'm doing anymore. I'm starting to have issues potentially with some of my peers. My manager seems reasonably disinterested in the future of my career. You know what I mean? Things start to compile. People start to build resentment and frustration. And that gets a lot harder to unwind down the road. So, yeah, very good point.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's another example where we are asking it to make correlations. So my prompt here is, how does leaving rate change for people who were overdue for promotion, who interviewed elsewhere, and who had a recent manager change? So
Interesting.
I'm just curious to say if any of these factor is leading to attrition.
It's almost like you're testing your own hypothesis, you know,
Yeah.
based on what you're kind of reading. Yeah, sure. Okay.
So basically in this data set, it's saying the conditions do not increase attrition. In fact, the leaving rates are slightly lower when the condition is present, especially for a recent manager change where attrition is 7% lower. This could mean that a recent manager change sometimes bring in a fresh start and reduces short-term exits. Overdue promotions and interviewing elsewhere might not be a strong standalone predictor. Perhaps they need to be combined with other risk signals to be meaningful.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
and
that's
it's
a lesson.
recommending that it
Yeah.
can check for a combo of overdue plus interviewed elsewhere to see. So we can always say, yes, check that combo for me. See, so independently, none of those three had a negative impact on people leaving. But when two conditions were together, that increased the leaving rate to 25%.
Right. Right. So again, the compounding of issues or resentments or whatever you want to call them, basically, is really kind of what tips people over the edge.
Yeah. Yeah. So now
Fascinating.
that I know that the combo effect has a higher impact, I can ask where in the data or where in the org or which teams does this combo exist so that I can proactively know which areas of the business I need to go and focus. So here are the teams where people have interviewed and are overdue for promotion. Right? So it helps me
Okay.
go zoom into hotspot areas much quicker versus if I was just seeing like the standard charts where I cannot, where I don't have flexibility to play with the information to make better diagnostics.
Indeed. Fascinating. And did you have some kind of an indicator in there in terms of like what an overdue promotion looks like? Was it meant to kind of, was there a rule that says it's meant to be every year or on average it is this?
That's a good point. In my data set, let's
Yeah.
see what we had as a field. I think we had the trigger. So here, like this for the first employee, they have had 3 promotions and last promotion was 5 years ago. So it
Right.
has that. And I mean, of course, we have the compa ratio information as well. And then, of course, we know the hire date. So it's in making inferences based on these data signals.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
All right. So I wanted to also give a sample of what does a predictive and prescriptive prompt look like. So here's one. I want to use the if then rule. So my prompt here says, give me 5 simple if then rules that best pick out who is likely to leave soon. For each rule, how many people it applies to, how often they left compared to average, and one action a manager can take this week.
So can I just ask you just real quick, Shweta, because that logic seems amazing. They're not necessarily words I would have or concepts I would have necessarily grouped together. The if then clause, what does that do for us?
So basically, what you're right, it doesn't one come naturally, but this is where data literacy, at least the foundational data literacy for HR teams, is really important. But basically, what we are trying to do here is that we are putting a condition.
I guess what you're doing is you're setting up the arguments, right? You're setting up the sort of statistical arguments to say, if this is true, then this may be true. Is that
Yeah.
kind of what this is?
Yeah. So basically, it's saying if the overdue for promotion and interviewed elsewhere condition exists, 12 people leave, and the leave rate is 25%. Versus the average of 7.6%. If this
Yeah.
condition
Okay.
didn't exist, the leave rate was 7.6. If this condition exists, then the leave rate is 25%.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay. That makes sense now.
Yeah. So it's picked up 5 if then statements that if average 25 career path clarity is less than 2.5, then the leave rate is 20% compared to an average of 2.8. If this condition didn't exist, then the leave rate is just 2.8%. So
Got
we
it.
definitely should look at this if then scenario.
Wow, you're not kidding. God, I mean, you look at those leave rates. Those are not small leave rates. I mean, yeah, that would throw any company into chaos if they were dealing with that level of attrition. So it's fascinating. So you said, okay, so you've basically asked ChatGPT to go back and do an analysis and say, go find for me the critical triggers. What are the things that basically force people to act negatively in this particular case? Because we want to keep them around. And where do those pop up? And it's come up with 5 of the most mission critical ones. And then go ahead and take us through the insight.
Yep. So basically, it's giving us those top 5 leave rates based on the then condition and also what action the person can do where
Yeah,
this particular condition exists. So if there is an overdue for promotion and they have interviewed elsewhere, what the leader of that team should do is meet each person one-on-one to discuss their career progression and create a fast track development or a promotion plan if you feel like you want to retain that employee because the
makes sense.
chances of them leaving is quite high. I'm also very curious to find out how did GPT calculate the leave rate? So we can just ask it. So if we are not sure of what it's doing, that the power of engaging with GPT is we can ask it to explain it to us. How did you arrive at leave rate? Is it actual or predictive. So it is actual, not prediction.
Right.
And
This is a
it's
really good skill to learn over and over again, by the way, in terms of interrogating and not necessarily believing the data that comes directly out of ChatGPT, especially if it hits you funny and you're kind of looking at it going, geez, that seems a bit high. Don't ever be afraid to go back and say, hey, I just have to question you about this. How is it you came up with this? And can you give me a bit of transparency in terms of your calculus? How did you determine this was a thing? I ask ChatGPT that all the time. It's just part of using good critical thinking, just to make sure that you get to the right information. Cool thing is, oh my God, do you learn a lot in doing so in terms of how the thing thinks and how the data is processed and everything else. Because if you then get interrogated when you go to present this data at board level, as an example, to say, hey, listen, I got a plan because we have an issue. The problem is our attrition levels are in a couple of critical areas are like north of 25%. That is painful. And as our head of finance will tell you, that is unrecoverable money walking out the door, and it causes all sorts of productivity and continuity issues thereafter. Not to mention the expense of getting somebody back in here, trained up and up to speed. So that being the case, here's where I identified those individuals, right? And then now I've kind of like learned when somebody kind of says, well, hold on a minute, where did you get this data from? And how come that's the right data? Do you really know that's the right data? And it's like, funny you should say that because I wasn't quite sure myself. You know what I mean? And you take them on this journey and they're sort of like, oh, it's brilliant. Okay, they're thinking like I would think and they're being particularly tough on the data. That's good. And, they did kind of pull up the sheet, which is one of the things, frankly, I would say for a presentation to say, I didn't trust it either, but this is what it came back with.
Yep, absolutely. And if you're struggling with prompts, ask GPT. Here's the data set from my company, and I want to come up with the proactive mitigation strategy based on this data. How should I interact with you? What prompts do you want me to use to extract as much signals and information and insights that I can to make an informed choice? Or you can ask it to come up with the mitigation strategy and a plan based on the data directly as well.
Indeed. Yep. Good.
Here's another example quickly. Turn the top 3 rules into retention plays. Name of the play, who owns it, when to trigger it, and what success looks like in 30, 60, 90 days.
Wow. Okay. Wow. It's given us some good detail here. Okay. So career crossroads intervention. I love it. Pathway clarity boost. See, it's so funny. I mean, it just seems so obvious when you read it, like, of course, yeah, definitely have to do something about the way that we communicate about careers and talk to people about this. But it's like, it's given you a branding name already. It's a really clever kind of thing, career crossroads intervention. I mean, you can immediately see like a program rolling out that has this whole discussion, assuming, of course, it gets approved by the board, that that's the way you're going to take it forward. I love it. This is interesting. When to trigger it. And then, yeah, the breakdown 30, 60, 90 days. This is fascinating.
Yeah. So just to wrap up, I'm just putting another prompt that came to my mind. If I do nothing in 2025, what will my exit rate look like by end of 2025? And where am I today? Let's see.
Oh, it's giving you 2 responses. I love it.
Yeah. It always does this to me every
Yeah.
now and then.
Yeah.
For me, it doesn't matter right now for the demo. I'll just pick this one. So it's saying right now our exit rate is 6.8%, and the projected, if no action is taken, is approximately 10.
Nice. Not good.
So then I can say, what are 3 things I can do in next 30, 60, 90 days to keep the turnover below, let's say, 8%. I'm just randomly giving it a number.
So it's giving you like a triage plan immediately. This is how to go attack this. Great.
But I can say, but this is very generic. Can you give me department and managers specific play, right? So I should know where and which pockets of the business I need to start acting.
Indeed. Oh, look at this. Wow. So it's immediately identified customer support high risk.
Yeah.
4 in overdue. Okay. JARs in high risk. This is brilliant.
Yeah. So we
Cool.
can go as vague and generic and as specific as we want to wrap our head around how to play with the data that we have. And the more data signals that we layer, the more richer insights we can get. And this will really help. I mean, I think if we leverage a large language model and this text, and I mean, today it's text-based, tomorrow it's going to be voice-based interactions. But if we can just talk to data, which helps us make more informed decisions and choices, that will be a game changer. Again, to your earlier point, Jeff, the story depends on the richness of the data that we connect and correlate. The more signals we have in our database, the better inference it can make and guide us through this journey.
Indeed. How would we wrap this up? I would love to do this exercise with you. How do we get ChatGPT to say, take everything we've talked about and put it into a 10-slide presentation? Something like that. Have you ever done that before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Of course.
So I had a prompt here. Sometimes you have to guide it, like sometimes it doesn't create 10 slides. But let's say summarize the whole story in, let's say, 5 slides for a CHRO or CEO. Which executive do you want to pick?
Let's do the CHRO first, because that's the first person we have to go convince.
Okay, so summarize the whole story in 5 slides for a CHRO. Have a short headline, 3 numbers leaders care about, 2 chart ideas, now then let's next later, and any other insights that the CHRO must know based on this data set. Let's see what it says.
Amazing. Okay.
So it's starting by saying that if we take action, we can prevent 2 percentage point turnover spike by end of year.
Got it. Which you could basically, kind of like share straight back into, your friends in finance and say, what does that equal in terms of
That's
money
right.
out the door?
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a very interesting point. I can even just go here and say, if we do reduce this, what will be the financial impact of this mitigation? At least it can do that based on the salaries, right?
Yeah, quite.
The data set had salary information.
Sure.
See, based on the salary, it's giving us a projection.
Nice.
So again, the more data we have in our data set, the richer the information and output we'll get.
Absolutely. Brilliant.
Yeah. So anyways, he said the output was, here's what we should do. And it's giving us the reasons for attrition. And it's giving us the chart ideas. We can always go and ask it to create this slide. It'll do that for us. Like if I just say, create this slide, instead of just guiding me through it, it'll build that slide.
Right.
And then now next later actions. So here it's guiding me on what needs to be done, but you can always ask it to do the job for you as well.
Terrific. Oh, look at
There
that.
you go.
I gotta love ChatGPT. Brilliant.
So this is, I mean, we have to use this as a partner, right? Like just like you will have a teammate. This is your teammate. Now we go back and forth, do work together, collab together. That's the differentiation we need to have in our brains, that it's not a tool like Microsoft Word or, Salesforce.com. It's an intelligence that we are dealing with. So let's deal with
It's a
it
brain
like an
boost.
intelligence.
Indeed.
All right,
Brilliant.
let's pause our conversation today. I think we covered a lot of ground.
Indeed.
Today we saw how exit data stops being just a post-mortem activity and starts becoming a crystal ball. We can use exit data and other signals to find hotspots. This really helps us play in the last mile, which is storytelling and insights delivery versus wrangling and sense-making data.
Yeah, and this is really the shift, right? We're going, instead of being a reactive force as per usual and chasing attrition after the fact, we're instead kind of looking to protect talent before they decide to leave, right? So start small, one segment, one rule, one action, and measure the change in 30 days. Get good at this and then scale it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want the data set that we used to test out this demo today, DM Jeff or me, and we will be happy to share the data set with you.
Terrific. And we'll always keep this human. Consent, minimal data, no tiny groups, and transparency about actions. If today helped, subscribe, leave a review, and pass it to a leader who cares about people and performance. We stand on the precipice as an HR profession of being able to have an outsized level of influence over the changes, the positive changes that we can finally enact with the use of AI. So please do reach out. Let's get a conversation going, and let's all get smarter together as to how it is we're going to bring about this positive change.
All right. Until next time, keep playing with your data.
Take care, everybody.